Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have an exciting pre-election show for you tonight. We're happy to have the chief petitioner on ballot measure 74 here tonight, Anthony Johnson from the Coalition for Patients' Rights. And then over our musical accompaniment is with, of course, Mr. Tim Pate and Jonathan Eder back again. How are you gentlemen tonight?
We're good. I'm good. You good?
Good, good. We have some film clips, questions. We'll be taking your phone calls in just a few minutes and more, so just stay tuned and bring on our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves.
Feel the force.
The big story tonight is that voters nationwide are about to decide on several marijuana legalization measures here in 4 days, Tuesday, November 2nd. In California, voters will decide on Proposition 19, the Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010, which legalizes the adult possession of limited quantities of marijuana for adults in private and allows local governments to regulate its commercial production and retail distribution. If passed, the measure would be the most expansive modern law ever enacted regarding the adult use, production, and distribution of cannabis. You can learn more about Proposition 19 in California at yeson19.com. That's yeson19.com. In Arizona, voters will decide on Proposition 203, the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, which permits state-registered patients to obtain cannabis legally from licensed facilities. Authorized patients who do not have a state licensed dispensary in their local area, which is defined as 25 miles, within 25 miles of their residence, would be permitted under the law to cultivate their own cannabis for medicinal purposes. Other patients, however, would not be allowed to grow their own marijuana. For more information about Arizona's Proposition 203, go to stoparrestingpatients.org. That's stoparrestingpatients.org. In South Dakota, voters will decide on Measure 13, the South Dakota Safe Access Act, which exempts state criminal penalties for state-authorized patients who possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana or 6 cannabis plants. 14 states and the District of Columbia have enacted medical marijuana laws since 1996. 10 have done so by voter initiative. To learn more about South Dakota's Measure 13, you can go to sdcompassion.org. That's sdcompassion.org. Here in Oregon, voters will decide on Measure 74, the Oregon Regulate Medical Marijuana Supply System Act of 2010, which creates state-licensed, not-for-profit facilities to assist in the production and distribution of marijuana to qualified patients. Oregon voters initially authorized the physician-authorized use of marijuana in 1998, and several states, including Colorado, New Mexico, and Maine, have enacted statewide regulations licensing the production and dispensing of medical cannabis. To learn more about Measure 74, you can go to Coalition for Patient Rights 2010.com. That's Coalition for Patient Rights 2010.com. We're happy to have the chief petitioner on ballot Measure 74 for Oregon here this evening, Anthony Johnson. We'll have him on in just a few moments. In Massachusetts, voters in 73 cities and towns will decide on November 2nd on a non-binding public policy question regarding the taxation of the adult use of marijuana and the legalization of physician-supervised use of medical cannabis. Approximately 13% of Massachusetts registered voters will be weighing in on the question. The The result will likely influence the language of proposed statewide binding ballot measure in 2012. To learn more about the Massachusetts initiatives, go to masscann.org. That's MASSCANN.org. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. We're going to jump over and talk to Tim Pate and Jonathan Eder. How are you folks tonight?
Oh, we're doing good. You're doing good. I'm awesome. That's what you said before. I believe you. You still haven't changed. Nothing's changed. No. Good. Well, you know, we live in interesting times. We certainly do. So it's good that we have an opportunity to talk about some of these initiatives tonight. I'm glad Anthony's here.
It's a blessing. It really is to have these votes coming up right now. It's pretty exciting.
It is.
We could have something we've been fighting for on this, in our movement for most of our adult lives, for a lot of us, legal marijuana in a U.S. state in just 4 days or 5 days.
It's true. You know, there's so many people who have said, I want to see this in my lifetime, who are not with us any longer. And I would love to see it in at least some of our lifetimes. It'd be a wonderful thing to have it happen now. It would be. It would be. Shall we play some music? Sure. Let's play some music.
Something for your fall.
Tim Pate and Jonathan Eder. And as Tim Dash is over here, I'll tell you, you can question our panel here tonight by calling us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. And I'd like to introduce our guest, Mr. Anthony Johnson. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. What a good time, the night, 4 days till the election.
Definitely exciting times we live in.
Yeah, it certainly is. Why don't we have you, first off, explain what Ballot Measure 74, I know we've been trying to do this on the show, but you're the expert.
So Measure 74 would allow licensed and regulated cannabis dispensaries for patients. They cannot be within 1,000 feet of a school nor within residential areas, but they must be nonprofit. But the producers and dispensaries would pay licensing fees and a fee equal to 10% of their gross revenue. And that money would go to the Oregon Health Authority, who must establish a fund to assist low-income patients have access to medical cannabis. And they'll fund medical research and be used for other Oregon Health Program. So it's a program designed to get medicine to patients that need it, as well as create thousands of jobs and generate millions of dollars for the state.
So that's it. That's coming up for a vote here very, very quickly. You guys have gathered signatures for over a year to
it's
put
been
this thing on
I would
the
say
ballot.
about a 2-year process of writing it, vetting it, gathering signatures, and now we're just 4 days away. It's pretty amazing.
Now there have been several endorsements. I know there was a Citizens Review Panel.
Yeah, the Citizens Initiative Review is a new pilot project where voters who match the demographics of voters in Oregon spend a week analyzing ballot measures, listening to opponents, listening to supporters, and also they can ask questions from experts all across the country. And the Oregon Citizens Initiative Review, we're happy to report, did indeed a majority endorsed Measure 74.
Yeah, that's great. That's a big step forward. Have there been any polls on it here recently? I haven't really seen any accurate polls or anything. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so the polling depends upon what likely voter model is used.
And the way the questions are skewed is always a point as well.
And if they're using a likely voter model similar to who came out to vote, in the presidential election in 2008, we win in a landslide. More people support this measure, medical marijuana in general, than say support President Barack Obama. We saw that in 2008 in Maine and Michigan, their medical marijuana acts got more votes than President Obama got. If you use a model that they are somewhat expecting, this kind of right-wing, Tea Party, conservative kind of wave that's sweeping us, then we're down a few points. So it all depends upon the turnout.
Yeah, it often does key to turning out your voters. So
vote.
Yeah, exactly.
So get out votes.
Urge you.
Spread
Go
the
out
word.
and vote yes on ballot measure 74 here. And we are taking your phone calls tonight. You can call us at 503-288-4448, and we have a call standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, I just wanted to make a few comments and see what your opinion of them were.
Sure.
I know you've talked about it many a times about the Rick Simpson oil and its benefits for cancer patients and whatnot.
Right.
And that it has been pretty much proven, like almost to the 100%, that it can cure all, wide range.
Lots of forms of cancer, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and even stage 4 and stage 5 and whatnot. And so with that and the fact that that cannabis used to be the most widely used medicine in the world up until the 40s, and that 3,000 out of the 8,000 doctors in Oregon alone have prescribed it to at least one patient. Why is it that the American Medical Association and the Oregon Department of Health are kind of sitting on their hands?
Well, those bureaucracies move very slowly, and I do know that the American Medical Association recently changed their stance from being opposed to medical marijuana to saying that they think it now has some medical efficacy. Wasn't there a statement from them just here about 6 months ago? You remember that, Anthony?
Yeah, they stopped opposition, and they definitely recognize that more research needs to be done at the very least.
Right, exactly. So,
but you mentioned the words right there came out of your mouth when you said there are 8,000 doctors and 3,000 say yes. I mean,
over
5,000. That means around 5,000 haven't come around yet, and that's something that we're still working on. That could even be the the board of supervisors for the physicians in the state and all those underneath them. So there's still a level of bureaucracy that just has not been breached yet.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, doctors aren't trained in medicine. I mean, when they're trained in medicine, they aren't usually taught about drugs. In a 4-year course of study in basic medical school, they take one class on pharmaceutical drugs. Most of it's aimed at anatomy and other things.
Well, yeah, because they don't want them to know about it. They just want the pharmaceutical companies to come in and sell them all the drugs to basically make them think that they know everything about it.
Exactly.
That's
well,
the
they
process.
come in and offer cash incentives and trips and conferences in exotic places to prescribe the molecule that they patented to your patient.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me that people accept things like Marinol, but won't accept things like cannabis. When it comes down to it, it's what I consider a drug is something that's made from a plant synthetically.
Well,
I don't consider cannabis to be a drug.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you look at it like this, it would be akin to saying that cocaine would be less regulated than coca leaf, but heroin would be less regulated than opium poppies or something along that line. That's the situation we have now with synthetic THC, the main psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, as a pharmaceutical drug that's actually a Schedule III pharmaceutical, and medical marijuana generally a Schedule I federally, even though Oregon's Board of Pharmacy has now moved it to a Schedule II drug this year.
Yeah, well, it's about time, considering we all know it has medical benefits. I mean, we've known that for thousands of years.
Yep. Well, we have to fight for it now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the show, and I hope that people start waking up and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for helping educate our viewers as well. Have a good night.
Bye.
If you're out there and you have a question about ballot measure 74,
yep, I got some questions.
Or ending adult marijuana prohibition and restoring hemp, or helping patients, give us a call at 503-288-4448. Go ahead with your questions there, Tim.
How soon do we implement this?
So we give the Oregon Health Authority 6 months to enact rules after the law takes effect, which is on January 1st.
Okay.
So they would have 6 months to implement the rules and start issuing the producer and dispensary cards. They don't have to take the full 6 months, but I would expect them to take the 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So then we wouldn't have any real dispensaries until after that 6 month period, or?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Okay. All right.
You know, it's possible they would issue some interim rules.
They have to develop some administrative rules. There's going to be a process where they promulgate them and put them out there, and then a hearing regarding those and perhaps revisions.
Yeah, they will have public hearings all across the state, getting input from concerned citizens, patients, activists, law enforcement. They'll probably look at what's been going on in other states that have regulated dispensaries like Colorado, New Mexico, Maine, Rhode Island, and they'll develop rules that we left up to the Oregon Health Authority to implement.
Okay.
All right. We have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi there.
Hey.
First time caller. Good to see some green on TV.
Hey, welcome to the show.
I have a question for you guys.
All right.
I'm a grower for my mother and also a potential patient. And I was wondering how this 74 is going to affect my rights as both of those.
Good question.
Really doesn't affect your rights. The medical marijuana law, if you like the way it's working, it just adds another option. You can still be a grower, a caregiver, or a patient and get those cards. It won't affect that. Isn't that right, Anthony?
That's exactly right. Your grower relationship with your mother, and you've grown for yourself, if you don't want that to change, that won't change at all.
There you go.
If you so choose to become a producer to grow for dispensaries, then you can do that. And another thing dispensaries will offer for growers like yourself and patients like your mother and potentially you'll be able to go to a dispensary and try different strains, different products.
Get clones?
Get clones from a dispensary because it fits your mom's medical condition. So it'll have benefits to people who don't even actually need to go to a dispensary because they have their own garden, but it'll even have benefits for you.
But you know as well as I do, if you're a grower, there's always going to be that time when you are out for 3 weeks.
It'll happen.
It happens, man. It happens every year, So, yeah, count how many you're out. But it happens. This would give you that opportunity. If you are a sick person and you require that medicine, nothing should stand in the way of you having that medicine. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, and every so often there are efforts in the legislature or at the ballot box of people who don't like medical marijuana to try to take away personal gardens. And Measure 74 reiterates that the rights of patients to have their own garden shall not be infringed upon. So actually your personal garden, your right to have your personal garden will actually be strengthened if this law passes, because it'll be once again the people of Oregon recognizing that patients should be able to have their own garden.
Right on. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good one.
You too. So, Anthony, you want to tell us a little bit about your background? You're an attorney, aren't you?
Yeah, I no longer practice. I could practice if I wanted to pay the bar dues and catch up on all that. All the insurance and all the hoops they make you run through.
Yes, you do.
I practiced criminal defense for 2 years. I graduated from the University of Missouri Law School, and I became active a little bit as an undergrad at the University of Missouri, but heavily as a law student at the University of Missouri. I became an activist mainly because of seeing how my African American friends who got arrested for cannabis were treated differently than my middle-class white friends. My middle-class white friends were written a ticket. They could get good lawyers, you know, be off the record when they got done with their probation. My African-American friends with like less marijuana would be handcuffed, marched out in front of everybody in the dorm and get a tougher punishment because a lot of times they wouldn't have the money to get a good attorney. So that's why I became involved in the cannabis reform movement, started going to normal meetings, and I was one of the co-founders of our first Students for Sensible Drug chapters at the University of Missouri. And to be honest with you, I was actually a skeptic about medical cannabis, and I think that goes into the first caller who mentioned the Rick Simpson oil and the benefits of medical cannabis. And you hear about all these things that cannabis can do for patients, and it can be hard to believe because it is such a magnificent plant and a magnificent medicine, and no other medicine can help so many conditions. And so upon first hearing it, I was actually a skeptic and became just involved as a civil rights issue. If nobody's hurting anybody else, it's not the government's job to arrest you, take away your property, take away your livelihood. But becoming educated about medical cannabis, and I realized and learned about the medical benefits. And so while I was in law school, I co-wrote 2 measures that ended up successfully passing in 2004 that decriminalized personal amounts of medical cannabis, which in Missouri is 35 grams. So a patient with a doctor's recommendation in Columbia, Missouri can possess 35 grams of cannabis legally with a doctor's recommendation. And if you're not a patient and you have 35 grams or less of cannabis in Columbia, Missouri, the punishment is just a maximum $250 fine, and you're only written a ticket, no arrest, no jail time. And that was very important for a college town like Columbia, Missouri. That way students don't lose their financial aid if they happen to get caught with a joint. And so that's when I became really active. Actually, in 2003, we lost an election, and then in 2004, we just got right back on the ballot and won it in 2004. And then in 2004, I came out here, passed the bar. I practiced law for 2 years, found out that I hated it, which really surprised me. I hated the fact that somebody over their limit, say on plants, or their card expires and you get arrested for it in Portland, for instance, here in Multnomah County, the charges will be dismissed or you get probation. But if you're just an hour south in, say, Marion County, you're looking at 18 months in prison. Yeah. And somebody's mother, girlfriend, wife is crying in the courtroom because, you know, this good person, nonviolent person has to spend almost 2 years in prison for this non-toxic plant. And so I decided that that I needed to get involved in activism and change, you know, heavily and change the law so that we didn't have to see people, nonviolent people, go to prison. And so after 2 years, I managed to find a way to make a living in cannabis activism. And the pay's not quite as good as law, but my quality of life and my stress levels are definitely much better.
It's good. Right. It's good. Well, I want to applaud your activism and thank you for helping get ballot measure 74 on the ballot and out there. We have a caller who's been standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yes, hi.
Hey.
Hey.
First time caller.
Right on. Thanks for calling.
Thanks. I have a twofold question. One is, if the initiative passes, would the yearly cost of having my license be lower for someone like me being on Social Security disability?
You want to answer that, Anthony?
I expect that it will.
Isn't there a provision in ballot measure 74 that gives low-income patients the nonprofit dispensaries will supply
the Oregon Health Authority has to establish rules that will provide an adequate supply of medical cannabis for low-income patients. But I believe that the fees that patients have paid to register for the program.
Yeah, the $100 annually, and if you're on food stamps or Social Security's supplemental security income program, or the Oregon Health Plan, then it's just $20 a year.
Then it's just $20, and I believe that has fluctuated over time depending on how much money the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program has in its budget. And so when the legislature takes the money out of the budget, the fee shoots up to $150, and then when it's flush with cash, it goes down to $50, and so it kind of fluctuates.
It has fluctuated.
And one thing the activists have done is try to get the state to issue discounts to people on disability, issue discounts to veterans, for instance. And I believe under Measure 74 that the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program will have a lot more money in its budget, and so I would like to see, and I believe they'll be able to drop the fee and give discounts to more patients.
I'd like to see them do it to go to more than just one time a year, maybe every 5 years or something like that. It makes sense.
Through our clinics, we help patients all across the United States, so we see the whole gamut of fees.
Right.
Where in Nevada, you have to pay 3 fees at 3 different times in the process, and the total cost is $212, to a low in the state of Montana, where your first year fee is just $25 and $10 a year after that to renew it. Wow. So that's the lowest in the country. So obviously, I think we should go more toward a Montana fee, especially if there's surplus cash.
Absolutely.
If you have another question for us out there, give us a call. We'll be taking calls for about another 30 minutes. You can call us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448.
There's a sense that when you're sick and you have to pay fees to get your medicine, that you're being taxed because you're sick.
Right.
That's what I object to.
Well, I object to it too, but it certainly beats being arrested. I remember
much more
being
so
arrested.
Yes,
and
it
gives
does.
you a whole relief from that anxiety and the hiding in the closet.
I like that little get out of jail card free. It's important.
Yep. You know, it took me about a year after having a card to get over the paranoia involved, being afraid to grow my own. And when I did grow it, being afraid to, go into the garden and things like that. After hiding and not having to be afraid like that is worth every penny of it. And one marijuana arrest would cover even the Nevada fee for 20 years.
Yes, it would.
So there's no
Certainly
doubt that
would.
it's definitely worth it. We have a film clip we're going to roll, and we'll be back in just a moment. So stay tuned.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman, hemp was indispensable. A 44-gun frigate, like our cherished old Ironsides, took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging, including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference. The Conestoga wagons and prairie schooners of pioneer days were covered with hempen canvas. Indeed, the very word canvas comes from the Arabic word for hemp. In those days, hemp was an important crop in Kentucky and Missouri. Then came cheaper imported fibers for cordage, like jute, sisal, and manila hemp, and the culture of hemp in America declined. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy as well as of our industries. In 1942, patriotic farmers at the government's request planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand%. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. In Kentucky, much of the seed hemp acreage is on river bottom land such as this, along the Kentucky River Gorge. Some of these fields are inaccessible except by boat. Thus, plans are afoot for a great expansion of the hemp industry as a part of the war program. This film is designed to tell farmers how to handle this ancient crop, now little known outside Kentucky and Wisconsin. This is hemp seed. Be careful how you use it. For to grow hemp legally, you must have a federal registration and tax stamp. This is provided for in your contract. Ask your AAA committeeman or your county agent about it. Don't forget, Hemp demands a rich, well-drained soil such as is found here in the bluegrass region of Kentucky or in central Wisconsin. It must be loose and rich in organic matter. Poor soils won't do. Soil that will grow good corn will usually grow hemp. Hemp is not hard on the soil. In Kentucky, it has been grown for several years on the same ground, though this practice is not recommended. A dense and shady crop, hemp tends to choke out weeds. Here's a Canada thistle that couldn't stand the competition. Dead as a dodo. Thus, hemp leaves the ground in good condition for the following crop. For fiber, hemp should be sown 5 pecks to the acre. With drill, the closer the rows, the better. These rows are spaced about 4 inches. This hemp has been broadcast. Either way, it should be sown thick enough to grow a slender stalk. Here's an ideal stand. The right height to be harvested easily, thick enough to grow slender stalks.
All right, that was Hemp for Victory, a 1943 Department of Agriculture video that was discovered in the Library of Congress after searching back in the early 90s by Jack Harrer in some of his research. But we are taking your phone calls tonight. You can call us at 503-288-4448. We have a guest on with us, Mr. Anthony Johnson of the Coalition for Patient Rights 2010. So we do have a caller standing by. Welcome to our show, caller. Oh, no.
Nope, we lost them. All right, they went away.
Well, we wanted to talk a little bit about how Measure 74 and Proposition 19 are moving the issue forward on a national basis, I know.
Yeah, it's definitely made it a much more mainstream issue, talked about on the news a lot.
There are more news stories going on right now. Like the New York Times has had a whole series of them the past few days.
Yeah, definitely. It's we're seeing it all across the country, and both measures have moved us forward. And no matter what happens on Tuesday, they're definitely going to be big. This is definitely a big year that I think that helped us in the war. You know, that's waged upon nonviolent citizens in our cannabis community.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party of Oregon endorsed Measure 74. I believe it's the first time a Democratic Party has endorsed an actual marijuana measure that was on the ballot. And not only did they endorse the measure, they actually let us use their auto-dialing phone banking system this past Thursday to call Democrats under the age of 40 and urge them to vote. And by letting us use that system, they have to be on record as giving us an in-kind campaign contribution. So not only the Democratic Party of Oregon endorsed the measure, they actually made a contribution to a medical marijuana measure on the ballot.
Good. That's a big step forward.
Yeah.
Certainly.
It is.
Former mayor and police chief of Portland, Tom Potter,
That's right.
endorsed our measure, wrote a ballot argument that's in the voters pamphlet that everybody can read, and he also cut a radio ad for us. So, and you know, George Soros gave $1 million, which possibly maybe $3 million.
I had, the media reported that George Soros had donated $1 million to television campaigns in California for Proposition 19. But I just came from a conference in New York City this past Monday and Tuesday. The Marijuana Conference is what it was. It was a conference of financial and industry people talking about the future of our nascent emerging industry. And in that, it was announced that Soros had in fact also given another $2 million just after this reporting period. So by the end of the campaign, he'll have given a total of a little over $3 million here in the last week, $3 million a little bit before that as well. In addition to writing an editorial in favor of it on Monday in the Wall Street Journal. So there have been articles by experts in all the papers. The New York Times has had a whole series of articles. It's really gone mainstream, and the proposition in California, Prop 19, is being watched all over the world. It's the most talked about initiative in several years, I believe.
Nicholas Kristof,
Oregonian in the past, but now New York Times writer.
Raised in Yamhill, and he had a great column in the New York Times, and he's definitely a well-respected columnist who predicted many things about the Iraq War, and is at the forefront of many issues. And so the Conrad Black, who's a writer for the National Review, a conservative writer, a conservative publication, he just had a column published about ending the drug war and the failure, especially of the war on cannabis. Two of the founders of Facebook donated $170,000 to Proposition 19, so it's definitely moving more and more mainstream, and no matter what happens on Tuesday, I think 2010 is going to go down in the history books for when we end this war.
I certainly hope so.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Looks like it here. Either way, it's going to move the issue forward a great deal. It's beginning of the end of global cannabis prohibition, I certainly hope. We are taking your phone calls tonight at 503-288-4448. We have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, am I on?
Yep,
yes,
you are
on.
Okay, hi guys. Listen, I'm just honored to be able to talk to the experts. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's good that you called.
And the expert, and so I need your expert advice on something. I understand that there are 67 cannabinoids in marijuana, and the one that we do know about is THC delta 9, obviously tetrahydrocannabinol delta 9. What about the other 66 cannabinoids? Know anything about those and what they do to the human body?
Well, the one that has the most medical efficacy is cannabidiol, or CBD. CBD is good for chronic pain, neurodegenerative diseases, gastrointestinal ailments, glaucoma, and it has the broadest medical efficacy. There's also cannabichromine, CBC, has some antibiotic and analgesic properties. And there's a lot of different cannabinoids, but the main thing you should know about them is that they're akin to neurotransmitters, but they run retrograde to all other neurotransmitters. They're really what's called neuromodulators. They modulate the flow of neurotransmitters in your nervous system. And there are a number of cannabinoid deficient diseases, like autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis or IBS and Crohn's disease, that are caused by a lack of your endogenous cannabinoids. And so they're these endogenous cannabinoids that the plant cannabis mimics and locks up some of these receptor sites in this neuromodulator.
That's fantastic. They discovered all this recently. That's wonderful. I really appreciate that.
There's a fellow, Raphael Meshulam, in Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Israel. He discovered THC back in 1974. He's still a researcher, and then in 1992 he discovered the endogenous cannabinoid. He named it anandamide after the Sanskrit word for bliss, and he discovered the receptor sites throughout the nervous system, and so that opened a whole new window in neurosciences. And so scientists and pharmaceutical companies are still investigating how these receptor sites work throughout the brain and nervous system.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good question.
Okay,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you. If you have a question for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4448.
And I'm afraid that what's going to happen is, over the years, not afraid, but I'm thrilled to hear, each one of those, the 67 ones, each one of those is going to have some other important aspect that we
there are a lot of
don't know
different
about
cannabinoids.
yet.
I had heard they were 40 plus, maybe it's up to 67 now.
Don't know. I don't know.
I'm not 100% certain either, but I know that 5 or 6 of them have shown medical utility, and the pharmaceutical companies are investigating those and how they can patent certain aspects of it. And I know Vioxx it was a inhibitor, COX inhibitor, which is similar to the inhibitor of cannabinoid receptors. So there's some similarity. What they find is if you don't have cannabinoids, your endogenous cannabinoids, for some reason it can cause cardiac failure. And so it's tied into bone growth, so it stops osteoporosis. It's tied into slowing the progression of atherosclerosis. And it modulates inflammation. So if you have, say, a virus that you want to get rid of, you should probably not take cannabis because it's going to dampen your inflammation that will rid your body of the virus. So there is a contraindication if you're sick from a viral infection, you probably don't want to take as much cannabis because your body won't be able to inflame. But aging is largely a buildup of the effects of inflammation. So that's so the more you can dampen the inflammation response when you don't need it, the slower you will age.
So this is Ponce de Leon's
It'll increase longevity.
Is what you're saying.
Go ahead, Ian.
It's just such a new and exciting scientific development.
Yeah.
These cannabinoids are just recently discovered. Previous caller asked why AMA and these doctors aren't getting on board. I think that has a lot to do with it. It's so new. And I think most doctors who've been practicing for 20 years don't even know about the endocannabinoid system and that our
they
body
don't. Like I
produces
said
cannabinoids.
earlier, they don't learn about medicines and pharmacology in medical school. They take one class in a 4-year regimen, and in 4 years, one class is just a drop in the bucket. So it's not a lot of education.
There's a new documentary out called "What If Cannabis Cured Cancer," and it has talks about some of the.
They've given us a copy of it to run on our show. We just haven't started running it yet.
And one thing they mentioned in that documentary is if you block the cannabinoid system in mice, they grow tumors. And there was a weight loss drug that was approved in Europe for a while that blocked the cannabinoid system. And during a study where they were studying the use of the drug, 5 people committed suicide because their cannabinoid system
severely depressed. We have another caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hi, this is I'm a grower for about 4 years, and I just had a quick question.
Sure.
I'm wondering how to go about getting my percentage of THC measured. I don't know if it's possible, or there's got to be a way.
Well, there are several companies that, and more of them every day, that say the your THC and CBD content, and also check for pesticides and mold. And one of the industry leaders down in the Bay Area in San Francisco is Steep Hill. I know there is a Montana company. Steep Hill, though, won't take samples outside of the state of California. They don't want to run afoul of the Interstate Commerce Clause. I think there's a company in Montana that is starting to take some out-of-state samples, and I think that probably soon in the near future we'll see a company open up here in Oregon and up in Washington to help Northwest patients as more and more producers want to find out their content and make sure that dispensaries in particular, it will help in their market to be able to assure that they have a medicine, what the content is, and have some standards. And as those standards are adhered to, they'll become more and more prevalent. And in the coming years, it'll be unusual to get cannabis from any commercial outlet that isn't a safe.
Yeah, I understand. What I'm looking at is I just voted on Measure 74, and I'm looking to get active with that program in case it passes. It's looking really good.
You and probably about 10,000 other people. That's
well,
fine.
I'm trying to be proactive a little bit on this.
Good.
I grew up with my wife. She's a medical patient, and I'm wondering, is it totally nonprofit? Is there any kind of starter help that you know about as far as if you were to get your dispensary license?
Well, you have to be a nonprofit if you want to be a dispensary, but you can be a producer and supply dispensaries. Isn't that right, Anthony?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I'm probably what I'm actually wanting to know about then. Okay, so that's the deal I'm probably looking at.
You want to explain that a little further?
Yeah, so we set it up where producers can be individuals, and they just pay a $1,000 licensing fee, and that license gives you the ability to provide the cannabis for the dispensaries.
Is that $1,000 a year?
$1,000 a year.
And now that implements some audit as well, right? The state health department will be able to come in and inspect producers. Is that correct? Then there's a limit on the plants and quantity of medicine involved in that too.
Of course, there's always going to be that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, what is that limit? Why don't we?
So being a producer allows you to have 24 mature plants and 72 seedlings initially. We give the Oregon Health Authority the power to hopefully increase that as time goes along, but that's what we set out initially. And
any size or weight restrictions on those plants?
Not on the plants, no.
Okay.
And the 24 plants can be as
6 ounces, is that?
And 96 ounces of how much you can possess.
Right.
Okay, I see. That's pretty savvy start for the limit, though, right off. I think. Now, I was also wondering, now when you're like, is there any kind of a tax deduction thing for any kind of power usage or anything like that, you think?
Yeah, there's a tax included. Isn't it 10% tax for both producers and dispensaries? in addition to that license fee.
Correct. That's
okay, excellent. Well, I think you guys answered my question, and I'll get out of your hair. And thanks a bunch, and great for having me talk on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for calling. You're not in your hair. We love the questions.
It's
It
important
keeps
questions.
us moving along.
Thanks for voting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Appreciate your support. We want to urge everyone out there, if you haven't voted yet, get your ballot and mark yes on 74 if you're here in Oregon, and mail that in. If you're in California, we hope you'll vote yes on Proposition 19. And
or any of those other states, because we're viewed in a lot of those other states as well. So
South Dakota,
vote,
Arizona.
Arizona as
If you're in Chicago, vote early and often.
So I know there are a number of Halloween parties and things coming up. I want to announce a party at Oregon Normal's Cannabis Cafe. That's going to be Saturday night, starting at 4:20, and it'll go to midnight. Appropriate time to start, 4:20 through midnight. That's at 322 Southeast 82nd Avenue, the Oregon Cannabis Cafe. You work with Oregon Green Free, don't you, Anthony? Do they have a Halloween party? I think they do, don't they?
Yeah.
They've been having one for years. I went to it many years ago.
Halloween party at the Patient Resource Center off 174th and Division.
When is that? When's your party?
And that'll be tomorrow. And show up at 4:20. Be a good time.
Saturday. That's Saturday. And then here's
you've got your own carved pumpkin here.
We have a carved pumpkin here. I've got, as most of our viewers know, I get the carved pumpkins during October, and have been the world champion for many years. And so tomorrow I'm doing a benefit for Playworks, an inner city kids program. So we hope to raise a bunch of money. I'm going to carve a giant pumpkin for them and auction it off later in the day. So that's such is life. Happy Halloween.
A little leaf on the pumpkin. That's cute. Well, we are taking your calls here for about another 10 minutes or so, so call us at 503-288-4448. We have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi.
Howdy.
You're on.
Do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a metabolic disorder called PKU. And I was wondering if you could get your card for something like that.
I'm not familiar with that. I'm not medically trained, though I work with a number of doctors. But tell me a little bit about the symptoms involved in that metabolic disorder.
It basically, I can't do that with the TV going. Turn it down, please.
Yeah, turn your TV down when you're calling in. It's distracting. There's a little delay there, too.
Yeah.
So, do you have chronic pain with that disorder?
No. What it really is that I can't eat protein, so it's really hard for me to eat at all. Like, it's hard for me to, because they produce medical foods that eat.
And do you get nausea? And,
yeah, it makes me nauseated and stuff.
So you would qualify in a couple of different conditions that. The particular condition isn't covered, but nausea right there is covered, as is cachexia. Cachexia is the lack of appetite, also called wasting syndrome. So it sounds to me like you would qualify on two different conditions under every state that has medical marijuana allows people with cachexia and with severe and chronic nausea to obtain medical marijuana. So you would definitely qualify.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question. Anything else?
No, that's
all right.
okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for calling.
I think you made her day.
Well, good. If you are a loved one or someone you know might benefit from medical cannabis, we have a physician referral service, so you can call us anytime. We'll be happy. If you don't want your own doctor to know about your medical marijuana, or you don't want it in your permanent medical file, or your doctor won't do it, or your friend or loved ones won't, then you can call us for that physician referral at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606 here in Oregon. And throughout the rest of the country, we have doctors from sea to shining sea. You can call us at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. And we know that this show is very popular in Denver and Seattle and Michigan and in over about 15 different cities across the country. So if you're out there watching, you can watch us on Ustream as well, live, if you're watching us streaming every Friday night Pacific time. We have a studio audience member question. Go right ahead.
Anthony, thanks for all the hard work you've done. Paul, you as well, and of course you as well, Tim, and you did a wonderful job on the hemp stock. I just overheard somebody saying getting your ballot into the mail. It's too late for that. It's got to go in the box now.
That's right. If you can take it back, take it by. It's too late to mail it. You're right. Thank you.
And anybody out there that hasn't got that red letter still laying on the table, they better fill it out, take it down, and do your part.
Yeah, in Oregon, we mail we have a mail-in ballot. So I don't know what it's like in Washington. Do they have mail-in ballots, or all they have to?
Not all of them. No, Oregon's the only state that has across the board.
That's how we do it here.
Ballots.
That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, that's a good point.
We have a telephone caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, I wanted to know. I'm a new grower, and we've had a problem with spider mites, and we've washed the room. You know, we've done everything that we were told to do, and we're using a spray that's is okay for human consumption. But we've still got them. They're still showing up. Is there anything else that we could use?
Yeah, there's one important thing to do. If you're bringing air into your room, you want to filter the air coming in, and because spider mites are microscopic and they are spiders. They put out a little silken thread, and for them that's like a sail, and they parasail right into your room, and none of their predators do that. So out in the world, usually they're held in check. Also, they thrive in a warm, low humidity environment. The faster their life cycle goes, the more quickly they can breed, and that is determined on them sucking juices out of the plant and expelling those through their exoskeleton. So if there's higher humidity or lower temperatures, then that's going to slow down their life cycle. But really, elbow grease is one of the key components as well. You can use soapy water, treating them with soapy water, letting that dry, washing, rinsing it off is another option. You can also use cayenne.
Out in the rain?
Huh?
Yeah, even more so.
Sticking it out in the rain? Would that work?
They don't like being out in the cold. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would take, if you have a bat infestation, what I have done in the past is I take them out into a cold, rainy night and get a power hose and tip it down and just blast them from the bottom, because you've got to get what you're spraying on the plants has to coat the bottom of the leaf, because that's where they are primarily. That's where they feed, is on the underside of the leaf. So you want to be sure to saturate every inch of the plant. You could just turn it upside down and dunk it in some soapy water if it's a small plant.
Now what if you're budding?
Then you want to just use soapy water, and
that's better than
no sprays, no poisons.
Getting the product from the store.
You know, it depends on the product. I would be very careful in using what you apply on your budding plants.
Yeah, because you're going to be consuming it soon, and it could be nasty.
Yeah, well, what we're using, I don't exactly know the name of it, but it's a spray that we get from, you know, wherever you get.
One thing I would recommend, you know, is that you vary your regimen. You don't use the same thing over and over and over again. You want to hit it with whatever it is you're hitting it one day. Use soapy water the next. Use maybe
now what kind of soap do you suggest?
Something with cayenne pepper one day. You don't want to use neem oil on flowering plants, but neem oil would be another non-toxic alternative. You want to be very careful with medicinal grade cannabis or anything else you're going to consume and put in your body that way. So I'd be
you suggested pepper. Now, what kind of pepper would you suggest?
Cayenne pepper. You know, the spicy capsicum, that will kill them as well.
Capsicum.
Capsicum. There's also diatomaceous earth, which is it's non-toxic, less toxic than table salt, but you have to be careful not to breathe it. What it does is it's little microscopic diatoms, or prehistoric sea life, and so it has this hard calcium shell, and it will scrape the exoskeleton of insects, and then they'll bleed to death. And so that's another good alternative that's not harmful to you, but you don't want to breathe it. You want to be very careful with that.
Okay, well, I know the time's running short. A lot of this stuff is new to me, and I'm not sure how, I'll have to call the 1-800 number to get more information because, you're on slow. But,
all right, well, we want to thank you. Good luck with
that.
And spider mites are insidious. They're very hard to wipe out. It takes elbow grease and filtering your incoming air. Filtering your incoming air and being sure that you come into your garden clean without clothes that have been out in an environment where spider mites might have been. That's another important.
If they are starting to flower.
Yeah, you have to be careful. But you know what? We're out of time. I want to thank you for your calls and questions, though. And Anthony, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Thank you so much. Just get out there and vote. Spread the word. You can go to Coalition for Patients' Rights 2010.com. That's a long website, so you can also go to measure74.org, measure74.com, and also prooregon.org. And get involved, get active, and spread the word, and we're going to win this war.
I've been doing this show. This is show number 557 since 1997, and it's very exciting to think that by show 558, marijuana could be legal in the state of California. The world's 8th largest economy on its own, standing on its own, could have a groundbreaking effect for the whole world. So either way, the cookie crumbles. It's a huge move forward for our movement. I want to thank you guys for watching. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. Good night.
See you next week, folks.